Welcome to Real Leather Crafts. In this video, we are going to be making plant pokes, and in the process, we're going to go over how to prepare your leather for stamping. We're going to show you how to stamp letters in a straight line, and we're going to go over on how to stamp and embellish your plant pokes. This is a fun and easy project, definitely a beginner stamping project, and we will go over all the tips and tricks on how to make these cute, fun projects. So first, let's go over what you need to make them. First thing is first, we're going to need some leather to actually stamp on. This is the Realeather Leather Patch Variety Pack. It comes with 4 different patches. Several are big, and then there were the smaller ones, which I thought were the perfect size for our plant pokes. So you'll need a package of those. Next, we need to prepare our leather. So we're going to need a water bottle, spray bottle with water in it, and some paper toweling. Now we're going to need our stamps. So to stamp these, we're going to use 3 different sets of stamps. We have the basic set. This is set 8170. It comes with 6 different shapes, and we can use these shapes to embellish the edges of our plant pokes. Then to put the names of the plants on each of the plant poke, we're going to use this 3/8 inch alphabet and number set from Realeather Crafts. This is set T8133. It is all capital letters, but I thought that looked nicer on the plant poke, so that's what we're going to use. And then they have this adorable bugs stamp set. It has a grasshopper, a spider. Let's see if I can bring it up here so you can see it. Actually, let's just pull this out of here. There we go. So you can see there is the grasshopper, the ant, the scorpion, the ladybug, the dragonfly, the butterfly, the spider, and the bumblebee. This is a great little set, and it really inspired the entire project, because once I saw these, I was like, oh, how can we use the bugs? And that gave me the idea of the plant pokes. Once we're ready to start stamping the leather, we're going to need our mallet. That will help us, and then we need a surface to stamp on. This is a small metal anvil that you could use, or if you don't want to go out and buy one, or like me have one laying around, you can use these really thick little kitchen cutting mats. They work great. Then once we're done stamping, we can embellish our plant pokes using the Realeather leather dye pens. These are really nice pens. They come with a brush nib on one side and a bullet nib on the other. Tons of colors. This is just a handful of what they have. I've got the whole rainbow over here, and we will pull from them for our colors. To do the letter stamping straight, we're going to use a metal ruler, and we are also going to need painter's tape. We're going to use this to hold the ruler in place, as well as we're going to put it on the back of our labels, so when we get these wet, they don't warp out of shape. The tape will help it hold its shape. So more about that in a bit. And then once we're all done, we need to, let me pull one over here so you can see, we decided to punch holes in the plant poke, and then just take one of these skewers and slide it on there for ease of assembly. So we will need to use a hole punch. This one is set at the 4.5 hole. I think it got turned on me here. There we go. Yep, that's all set. And we will, of course, need 3 skewers, or 1 skewer per plant poke if you're making an entire garden of these plant pokes. So now that we have all our supplies and we've gone over them, let me clear this away and get set up to start making our plant pokes. All right, we are all set up and ready to start stamping our first plant poke. So the first thing we need to do before we stamp is we need to wet the leather. So I'm going to move this out of the way for a second. And you're going to want some paper towels. Now, this is called casing the leather. Now, you can soak the leather. There's all kinds of information about how to case it. I consider this kind of a quick casing, because I'm not going to immerse the leather in water, and I'm not going to wait 2 days. I want to stamp this quickly. So I'm using just plain water, and I am spraying both of these labels. You can see it just wants to suck up the water. Okay, and then I do use the paper towel to sort of get the excess off. And you can see, like here, see it's kind of mottled, and I need to give it a little more water around the edges. You just want to make sure that it is consistent. So, and again, I'm just getting rid of some of the excess. You want the leather to be damp and cool to the touch, but you don't want it soaking wet. And we're gonna let this kind of soak in there. This bottom one soaked in a little faster. Now, full disclosure, I live in Arizona. It doesn't take very long for things to dry here. So you can start to see it's just changing color as it dries. So these are now ready to be stamped. This one is still, let me see if we can hold these up. You can see the color is starting to change. This one is pretty much dry. Well, not dry, but absorbed. And then this one, the color is still working on absorbing the water. So before I sprayed it with water, I did put painter's tape on the back of each of these labels so that while I was doing this with the water, it's going to want to warp and shape a little differently. And when it dries back to its normal state, the tape will help it stay nice and flat. You can see, other than where I pushed these onto the skewers, they're nice and flat. They had painter's tape on the back of them. So this one's ready to stamp. This one is, I've got a little wetter. It has to have a little more time to dry, so we're going to set that one aside. So next up, we need our anvil or our mat. I don't want my label sliding all around while I stamp it. So I am going to put some painter's tape on the back, and I'm going to stick it down onto my anvil. Okay, next, I have laid out my letters. We need to do one that says time, T-H-Y-M-E. There we go. And your tool, your stamps come with a tool and then the stamp. So I've laid them out in the order of way I want them on here, so I know my spelling is correct. Get that all done so you're less likely, especially on a harder word, you have your spelling correct. Now we're going to use a straight edge and we're going to try to get the word time centered on here without a huge amount of effort. I am going to put some tape onto my ruler edge. So it's just on there like that. And I'm going to take one of my stamps. This is the middle one. And I'm just going to put it onto the label. This helps me kind of eyeball the center. If you wanted to measure everything, you can. I am just doing these as fun projects, so I don't want to spend all day measuring them. But obviously, if you're working on more expensive leather or a much more elaborate project, you will be much more precise with this. I do use a whole number at the edge of the label, so I can find the center this way. And now I take my ruler in place as well. Now I've got my ruler that will flip over as needed and my patch secured to the anvil. So those two things are good. The next step is to get the letters in the right position. So the tool comes with the stamps. You just pop the tool handle onto the stamp. And then the other thing to notice, if I can get it to focus for me right, well, here maybe without the tool. There we go. On each of the stamps, there is a little dot right here. Okay, it's kind of hard to see with my hands. Let's see if I can do it that way. There you go, little dot in the lower left corner. That means my letter is upright. So if the dot is in the lower left corner, the letter is going in the upright direction. It's very sad to flip a letter when you're doing this. So we're ready. I took the middle letter of time and I'm going to find the middle of my patch. This is 4 1/4, which means, no, I'm sorry. The patch measures 1, 2, 3 1/4. So we have to go over 1 5/8. And I make sure the dot is in the lower left. I make sure the edge of the stamp is against the ruler. And I'm going to give it a nice stamp. I'm going to rock it. Now, depending on how strong your hands are, you may only have to do this once or twice. If your hands are weaker, you may have to do it more. So once I feel like I've got it in there, I'm going to pull this out and I have a nice deep Y right in the middle. So I probably stamped it a little harder than I needed to, but now I'm going to be consistent with all of my other stamps. So we have the Y, then we have our H. And again, you want to think about, there's a little space for the Y and there's a little space on the H. So you want to make sure that you kind of are guessing, this is the only part, you got to guess a little bit about the spacing between the letters. Again, plant pokes, this is a great practice one. Okay. There's the H. You can see the H is not nearly as deep as the Y. So if you have that happen, you can push the tool back into the H. You know it locks itself in place. And once it's in place, smack it down. Now the other thing I'm doing is I am rolling the stamp within the crevice, so I'm getting all the edges in there. Now it looks so much better. So there is the Y. And then we're just going to finish up the rest of these letters. I'm just going to speed it up so you can see it. Again, always putting the edge of the stamp against the ruler, making sure the dot is in the lower left, making sure my spacing is the way I want it, and then we go. So I'm going to do the last 3 letters and then we'll be back. All right, we have our word time. I did go a little deep on the E. I got a little aggressive there. So the more you do this, the more practice you'll get as to how hard to hit it, how often to hit it. But we have a beautiful patch that says time. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our letters and put them back. And now we have these adorable bug stamps. And I'm going to flip them up so I can see what bug they are, because there's certain ones I don't want to put on here. That's just me. Like spider, probably not. Scorpion, definitely not. I live in Arizona. We don't want any more of those. I do like the ant, the butterfly, the bee. The dragonfly is really cute, but it's a different scale, so we're just going to put that up there because we don't need all of these. Then we got the cute little ladybug. And finally, the grasshopper, we're going to not do him. So I'm choosing to do the ant, the butterfly, the bee, and the ladybug. And I'm going to do it in a little bit around, they're going to go around the patch. So I'm going to put flying bug, which is butterfly, then ant, then bumblebee, which is a flying bug, and then a ladybug, which is kind of a mix. I think I like that. So next thing I need to do is I'm not going to need the ruler anymore. Just take that off. And I'm going to decide where I want to put these. So I think I'm going to put the bee there. Well, we're going to put a hole at the top and the bottom, so don't forget that. So we're going to put a bee over here. And the hole is, again, for the skewer. With the bumblebee, then we'll do an ant over here. And we'll put a butterfly there. And then I think we'll do the flip-flop down there. So I kind of have an idea of what I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick one of these, put it on the tool. And you want to work fairly quickly because, again, I live here in Arizona. This is drying out. If it gets too dry, it's still cold to the touch, but if it gets too dry, I can always reapply water and let it dry, absorb in there, and we'd be really good. So, okay, so here's the bumblebee. Or I'm sorry, I think this is the butterfly. Let's see. It'll be a surprise for us all. It is the butterfly. It's very, very cute. So, oof, this thing is heavy. Just so you can see, there's the word time and the butterfly. All right, so we've done a butterfly there. And I think we're going to do a butterfly down here. I'm just eyeballing this. I'm not really spacing it. There it is. Now that butterfly is deeper than this one, and the letters are also match this butterfly. So I'm going to go back up here. The bugs are a little trickier, so just FYI if I mess this up. I'm just going to give it an extra. There we go. So we got 2 of those. We're done with the butterfly. Then we've got the ladybug, which I think I'm going to put her on either side here. There's that one. Now, ladybug, I can tell you from experience, is much harder to line up to correct. So try to get this one right on the first shot. There we go. 2 little ladybugs. And now we have the bumblebee, which I think we're going to put like that on the other side of the hole. one more up here like that. I think like that. There we go. So we've got those. Those all look really cute. So I didn't end up using the ant. I'm kind of okay with that. So there we go. That is what, there we are. That's what it looks like all stamped up. So we're done with the stamps. And this is just an extra one if I want to make another one. I'm going to put these aside. And the next thing we need to do is you can leave. I mean, that is really pretty, just like it's done. So we don't necessarily have to add color, but seeing how his buddies over here do have color, we're going to color that guy in. So to color this guy in, we're going to take it off the anvil. Move that aside for now. And move that aside. We don't need that, but I am going to keep the paper towels nearby. You could do a dye on this and just, you know, do dye so it goes into the recesses. But I've got all these amazing, these are all the different colors of dye pens from Realeather, which I love. We are now ready to add color to this. So these dye pens act like a marker. They have, like I said at the beginning, they have a felt tip and they have a brush tip. And you can, this was a patch I kind of didn't use earlier. You can do it on here to kind of get an idea, like a test piece. So the same thing as a test piece of leather to stamp on. You can use that same test piece for your pens. And to fill in the letters, I like using the brush tip and getting down into the crevice of my stamp. Now this is a little different than, you know, resist dyeing, putting the dye on and wiping the dye off. I'm literally just using the very tip of the marker in where we stamped, trying really hard not to go outside of it. So to do that, you have to go very slow and use the brush tip. And I'm just pulling the dye into the letter. That's, time is a little bit of a dark green. So we're gonna use the dark, this green, it looks very minty out here, but when you actually put it on the leather, it's very dark. So that's a good reason to test your colors. And there we go. There is time all colored in. Okay, I just went slow and steady, and I used the brush tip. So there is that part. So you don't want to touch that part while it's drying because I did pool the color into the letter. Next up is the butterflies, the bumblebee, and the ladybug. So the ladybug, how I did the ladybugs on the other one, which I don't, it's over here. I was just getting the hang of the markers on there. So I wasn't super good about staying in the lines, but you know, from a distance, which again, it's a plant poke, it's going to be from a distance, it looks just fine. So do not get too hung up on the details on decorating these. So this, I'm just going to do the red for the body. And I do feel like you're going to find one side of the pen gives you more control than the other. I think the brush tip gives me more control, but that's just me. So try both, see what you like. But these are really, really lovely pens to use. So there we go. So the ladybug is colored in. And then we're going to use the black to give it its dots. Very, very little. Because if you push down too hard, the pen will bleed. So we're just filling in the little dots. And then I'm going to do the head. On the other one, I did the legs and the antenna. I'm going to leave the legs and the antenna. I am going to do the line up the back. There we go. So there's our little ladybugs. You can see just how this is just like coloring in a coloring book. Now this is the pink for the bottom of the butterfly. And I'm just doing, when I'm doing this, I'm just doing the raised part of the leather. I'm trying really hard not to get into the crevice on this one, but to just embellish what has already been outlined by the stamp. And then I guess we will do orange at the top. Well, let's do purple. We'll do purple at the top. Add a little bit of dark color to this. As you can see, you just treat them like a pen. I can tell you from experience, I got it on my hands. It washed off fairly easily. I wouldn't recommend bathing in it, but you know, if you do get it on your hands or your kids are doing this and they get it on their hands, you can wash it off. I cannot speak for clothing, so don't get it on your clothing. It's a dye. There we go. So there's the two little butterflies, and I'm going to do their bodies yellow. Well, yeah, we're just going to do a swap of yellow, just a little to darken the leather, but not too much. Now we've got our bumblebee. Again, the stamp part is dark, so we're just going to color the whole thing in with the yellow, and then I'll go back in and accentuate the black. The black is hard, so you know, don't jump into the black unless you really want black on there. We're going to color in the little head and each of the bumblebees. There we go. And then we're going to just very gently do a couple of the stripes, just two of them. There are three there. I don't want to be that brave. I'm just going to do the two, and that's it. There we go. So, show you that up close. There it is. So pretty. So now we can take all of the tape off. The donut that was holding it in place, as well as my tape to help it keep its shape while it was wet. And that just pulls right off, doesn't hurt it. There we go. All right, now the next thing and last thing is we need to punch our holes for our dowel to slide on. So, and this one I designed it, stamped it, knowing the dowel was going to go through. So let's pull these away. So we have basil, we have oregano, we have chives, and now we have thyme. We always need more thyme. So we're going to take the hole punch. It is set at 4.5, okay, which is, I think that is the biggest hole on here. And you can take a pencil and mark where you want to put your holes, or you can live dangerously like me and just go ahead and you position it. You squeeze it tight enough to hold the leather, and then you really push it. And you can even turn the piece a little to make sure that you've got the hole all the way through. And then we're going to rotate it on the other side. Line it up the best you can, or if you were smart and marked it, you're good. But it doesn't have to be super accurate for this little guy. We're going to again punch down, and then I like to kind of rotate just to make sure. And there we go. We've got our two holes in our plant poke, and then we're going to slide this guy, bend it over, and just slide him on. And now we have thyme. So we have basil, chive, oregano, and thyme. And I just so happen to have a beautiful little basil plant here. So we can stick that right in there. And if we want the label down lower, we can slide it down, we can slide it up, or you could just cut that short if you want it shorter. But I may actually, for this little guy, he's a bit tall, I may actually use it and tie my basil to the stick. Isn't that just the cutest? Okay, so we have basil, and I'm going to insert a photo here of them all ready to go in their little plants. This is a crazy oregano plant. We're just going to stick this one in. And again, if we wanted to, we could just cut these shorter. There's the oregano. I mean, isn't that just the cutest? Or we can leave it higher because this plant just is really full and it just sticks out. It's just the cutest. This is a fun and easy project to do with kids or groups or just for your own garden. And we're just going to put this guy in here. Now these plants are going to live indoors, but if your plants are going to live outdoors, and there is time. If they're going to live outdoors, you can treat the leather so that it becomes more waterproof or water resistant. And there we go. We have our basil and our thyme and our oregano. So I'm going to put a photo in here so you can see them all prettied up in their shot. But leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think of our beginner stamping and coloring of leather to make these cute little plant pokes. Let me know if there's other projects you would like to see. We are definitely looking to explore the basics of leather crafting for beginners and beyond. And I appreciate you watching the video, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.